Good morning, everybody. Well, spring break is over, and our students are back at school. I dropped my son off at high school this morning, and he was excited to be in his first year in high school. Not too excited, of course, because he's a high schooler, so he has to still maintain some bit of cool, right? And so that was good too. But there was a lot of excited parents I saw, and a lot of excited students as school resumed. This is, of course, not a normal school year, but that doesn't mean that we don't want it to be an excellent school year. We really want this to be a great year for all of our students in Manitoba. And there are a lot of people in particular who are critical in making it a very important school year. Chief among those, of course, are those who are working in our schools and our teachers and our administrators. And they were back already last week doing really, really important work. And some people have seen the physical spacing of the desks and different things within the schools, hand sanitization stations, the directions, the arrows, a lot of different things in the schools. That preparatory work last week is critical for how things go, not just today, but in the days ahead. And I really want to thank our teachers, our administrators who came back, remembering that they are really relearning in some ways how to teach. All those different methods of group teaching and coming together and having students close together and doing work together, they are unlearning that in some ways and doing things different. So we need to give a lot of credit to those teachers and to all of those working in the school system for doing this under really difficult circumstances. And then the different school divisions have been overcoming challenges as well. Busing, as we acknowledged, is one of the key challenges because of the public health directives in terms of busing and, of course, the public health directives within the schools. But early on, we knew we'd have a very difficult challenge in terms of ensuring that all those students who are eligible to be able to come to school on a bus could do so. We learned this morning that I think about 95% of those who are eligible to be bused are able to get on the bus. I'm not talking about any, of course, some labor issues that are going on, but in the areas where there is busing happening, 95% of the students who are eligible are able to get that bus ride. But that means there's a little bit more work to do, and we'll continue to do that work. And I appreciate all of those in the divisions who have gotten us to this point, and that work then will continue. And to parents, before I take your questions, I want to say, not just as a parent myself, but of course to all the parents in Manitoba, I know this has been a stressful time for many as they prepare to get their students ready for school, and now they're off to class. But I know the vast majority have done so with optimism and with encouragement for their students. And we all know, those of us who've had children, that ultimately the attitudes that our children take towards many things in life is a reflection of the attitude that we as parents have on those things in life. And I'm very, very grateful for all of the parents who've been preparing their students for class today, to go with optimism and to look forward to the school year. And I think we have lots to be optimistic about. So again, in conclusion, before I take your questions, thank you to the teachers, to the administrators, to those working in the school divisions, to the parents, and most especially now to the students who are in class today. We hope you have not just a wonderful day, but a wonderful school year. And now I look forward to your questions. Hearing no question, oh no, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, it is a very significant day, Ian. There's no question about it, and it's significant on many different levels. When the in-class learning was suspended before spring break in March, we didn't really know what we were going into or when we'd be coming out of it. And those are discussions that parents had with their kids right around the province about, well, when would school resume, and nobody really knew, and what would it look like. So now there's some clarity around that. There's some certainty around that. There's been a lot of work over the summer, by department officials, and I would say to my Deputy Minister, Dana Rudy, and to all those within the department, thank you for your work, working together with the different stakeholders, Manitoba Teachers Society, Manitoba Association of School Superintendents, the Manitoba Federation of Independent Schools, and the Manitoba School Boards Association. All of those groups have been working with us through the summer with our department to get to this point. Now, most importantly in that is public health. And remember that public health has had a partnership with schools for a very long time. This is not the first time public health has been involved in schools. They've been involved in schools, of course, for many, many years, operating the vaccination programs in the schools, operating all the other health issues that happen within the school. So this is a relationship that existed for a long time, but this was intensified now during the lead up to school now in preparing the documentation, which of course was approved and signed off by officials in public health. So we can provide you the exact figures. Like, I don't know if part of that was involved within the labor issue or the labor dispute that was going on. I also know that there were school buses that have been ordered from other provinces that have arrived that I think we're getting prepared this week as well. But we can provide you the exact statistics. But the information we've been provided is that 95% of those who are eligible can receive that ride. Again, we can provide you the information. So there are, active labor negotiations happening there. Our expectation is that bargaining will continue. It should continue in good faith, as bargaining always should take place. So my hope would be that there would be a resolution quickly. I would say, though, having spoken with the board representatives and officials at the Winnipeg School Division, meeting with them last week, they've done a really good job in preparing. Obviously, everybody was hoping that there wouldn't be a strike today from the drivers, but they did a really good job putting in contingency plans. They're having their schools open a little earlier and close a little bit later so that those who want to drive there or pick up their students, but it doesn't quite work within the normal school time frame, are able to do that. And they have a lot of strong remote learning options in place, including providing technology. So they've done a really good job in terms of the contingency planning, but hopefully the strike is settled soon and those buses are back on the road. So, as you know, there's a process for labor negotiations, both within government and within the outside operating entities, and we won't negotiate from the minister's table or from a podium or in the public. Those negotiations have to happen in the way the respectful labor negotiations always happen. So, I'm not going to speak on a lot of finance issues or issues related to the bill that reside in another portfolio, other than to say our expectation is, in all times, that tax dollars be used appropriately. We obviously want to have the most amount of tax dollars within the school system and helping out students. These are particularly, unique times financially, obviously, around Canada and around the world as provinces and finance departments deal with the impact that COVID is having, not just, of course, on the health side of things, but ultimately on the finance side of things of government as well. But those labor negotiations will happen and should continue to happen between the employer and the employees. Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but we can get to that number. Obviously, we committed to providing the masks, to buy them centrally through central services and government, and then distribute them to the various schools. And I think that's been happening well. Though I also recognize that the vast majority of students seem to have also procured their own masks too. You know, I mean, it was an option that that certainly could have been looked at. I think that, not to speak for the individual school divisions, but I mean, where the greatest challenge initially existed, I think, was in the high school system. And trying to get that spacing, because certainly from public health they would tell us that the greatest risk of transmission are in those grades, in that grade 9 to grade 12, where the students are older, or perhaps those students are in the community more in different settings because they're working jobs within the community. A lot of that was alleviated because it's gone to a blended learning model, and so most of the high schools that I've been sort of familiar with, I'm sure there are others that are a little different, but most of them are going to something like an every other day schedule, and so their class size is significantly reduced, and so they're able to achieve that larger spacing. For the lower grades, while some of them I'm sure were still able to achieve that, the feeling was that the cohorting was combined with the other health requirements that have been put in place by public health was sufficient. Yes, I mean, at this point, of course, we had the $48 million that was saved by school divisions by the suspension of in-class learning in the spring. In addition to that, we've indicated there'll be another $52 million available for the needs that they have. And I recognize, Ian, that there are different approaches to this across Canada. There are some governments who sort of said, okay, there's this X amount of dollars, now everybody start reaching in and grabbing the dollars that you want. Our approach has been to work with the school divisions and say, what are your needs? What are your resources from what you've saved in the spring? Let's meet your needs with those resources. Let's provide additional resources so that you're not wondering about how certain things can be paid for if in your particular school division this is seen as something that's important, that's critical, because the needs might not always be the same, but there'll be some commonality, of course, and we'll provide that funding to support those needs. Well, other than to say that it was a manufactured story in the sense that, as you know, as health minister, not only as health ministers do, I the first person in the province to always get the flu vaccine and to encourage others to get the flu vaccine. And of course, that's still well documented on things like social media. But we brought in the high dose vaccine, particularly for seniors, because they were seen as vulnerable, and I know that's been scaled up this year as well. So I have a good track record in promoting vaccinations, including with my own family. But I clearly believe that education is critical when it comes to vaccination, and the fact that I stated the position of every province in Canada, including the federal Minister of Health, who restated that position last week, that there isn't a mandatory vaccination in Canada. I don't think it is controversial to restate the position of every government in Canada, including the federal government, while I'm promoting and encouraging people to get vaccination. I think it gives credence to the fact that that is the law in Canada. And I think it is important when you're talking about things like vaccination. I always felt this way when I was health minister as well, that the most powerful tool that you have isn't the force of law, but education and awareness. And I think that that's true for many things within health, that where you can provide strong evidence and strong education, that is ultimately how you get people to buy into something, not just vaccination, but many other things. So the promotion of vaccination or other health issues, I think should always be led by strong education. But certainly the fact that I restated the position of literally every provincial government in the country of every political stripe, and following the federal Liberal health minister saying essentially the same thing a week before is hardly controversial unless somebody is really interested in trying to find something controversial where none exists.
In other provinces, some divisions have an online tracking system to track the number of cases in each school. Do you foresee anything like that coming to Manitoba, or anything like that in the works?
Well, I mean, it speaks more to transparency, and as I've said, I think we need to be very transparent with the numbers of COVID cases that we find in the schools. And remember, we will find cases of COVID within the schools because schools are part of society, and we do have COVID in society. And so to me, the important part of that is being quickly transparent with those who might be impacted within that individual school. And so Dr. Goertzen has already made it clear that there's going to be, within 24 hours, that contact tracing and then notification to those who've had a close contact if somebody has been transmissible within the school setting, and then notification to the parents more broadly in that school that there's been a case within the school, but their student would be notified if there was a reason for them to be notified in terms of taking further health precautions. And then I think we need to be transparent with the public more generally about where cases are being found. Not because we want to create fear, but the exact opposite. I believe that public health and the school officials are going to do a very good job when they find cases within the schools, reacting to those cases, isolating those cases, ensuring that they don't spread more broadly. And if we can provide that information, I think it'll provide confidence more than it'll provide fear. We hear a lot of different things when it comes to the different requests, either from parents or from divisions. Some want more, some want less. Ultimately, we listen to the public health advice. Parents have to, and others who are in the system, should take confidence from the fact that the plan was developed by, in consultation with, and ultimately approved by public health officials. There are some areas in the world where we've seen that not to be the case, where the directions have been led politically and not by public health officials. That is, I think, where concern should come in. That is not the case with this back-to-school plan. It's been led by public health officials. So in the same way that when we have a flood in Manitoba, we rely on the advice of our chief flood forecaster, or there's an emergency in Manitoba and we rely on emergency measures to help lead the response. This is a health crisis in which we're having the public health officer lead the response, and they led the response when it comes to this reopening plan as well. And that's, I think, where the confidence comes from. In terms of other measures, of course, we'll have to wait and hear from public health as we go along if they feel there are other reasons for other measures. But at this point, I think they feel confident, and we draw confidence from them from what's been put in place. Here's the challenge, I think, that a lot of the schools and the divisions were dealing with. I mean, remember that, much of the concern actually, changes within people's own feelings when they see different numbers. And I think that that's true, that all of us are living through, emotional ups and downs when it comes to certain things. So, back in June and July when, our COVID numbers were quite low, the vast majority of the correspondence that we were receiving wasn't what's the information we're getting for the school schedule. It was, we want schools to reopen because it's clearly safe to do so. And then as the numbers changed and some of the nature of the letters started to change, but the preparation that we were doing within the department never changed. It was always based on what are the different scenarios that could happen, How do you react to those scenarios? How do you implement plans for those scenarios as they change? Because, while everybody was happy to see a couple of weeks in July where we had zeros in terms of new COVID numbers, nobody was relying upon that. There may have been a different public mood at that time, but we were always preparing for the different scenarios. But we also knew that as we moved into different phases of the pandemic, that the response would have to be a little bit different. We were preparing for that. But the information had to be not just timely, but it had to be correct. And so as a lot of the school officials returned to their classes at the end of summer, they were doing some of that detailed work in terms of staggering, whether it was classes or positioning or how students would enter or not enter. And for sure, all of us would like to have information more quickly. But I do think it's important to remember that this is the first pandemic that we've had for more than 100 years. And that there hasn't been a lot of playbooks on a lot of shelves in schools or in the media or in other places that were, in case of a pandemic, pull down the playbook and this is exactly how it goes, because it is the first time in 100 years. So given that, there are going to be some things that don't go exactly the way people would like. Information may not flow as quickly as I or others would like it to be to flow. And then we turn around and say, okay, how can we do a better job at that? But always in the context of remembering that this is the first time this has happened in 100 years. And so there's a lot of people within a lot of different systems, both in government and outside in government, including in the private sector, who are working extremely hard to adjust to things that they couldn't have planned 9 months ago. And I think overall, on an overall basis, where it's gone really, really well, they deserve credit. And if you feel it's gone badly in the education system, you can give me responsibility. But I give them absolute credit for how they've responded quickly to something that is unprecedented in our lifetime. I think ultimately, Ian, parents and families are doing responsible things. And that doesn't mean that everybody is doing everything perfectly, nor does that mean that every family is doing things exactly the same way. I think that parents want the best for their children, so they are following the fundamentals. Fundamentals is laid out by Dr. Goertzen every day and repeated every day, and they're doing their best at it. So when I look around and I see, in different places that I go, whether that's within the school system or more broadly within the community, by and large, I see people trying to do the right things. Does everybody do everything perfectly? No. But that's the nature of us being human beings, and the pandemic doesn't change that. So people are going to do, I think, the best that they can for their families, take the best advice for their own families' individual circumstances, and I see broadly that the public and Manitobans are doing that. So just to make sure I understood correctly, what I'm saying is where there are problems, give me the blame. Where there are good things, give them the credit, because they've been working really hard. And ultimately, listen, that's what ministerial accountability is about. That doesn't mean that I'm responsible for everything that happens, because I'm not individually running everything on the ground, but I'm accountable for answering to those things. And so I'm here being accountable and answering to you, and I will be in the future as well. I mean, a lot of it is hindsight, right? I mean, if we could all rewind the clock to summer of last year and say, well, we're going to have a pandemic next year, I think the planning, would have been different. There could have been more information that would have gone out more quickly to parents on scheduling. We could have looked at how staggered classes could have happened. I think where the biggest challenge for parents was, and I understand that in those summer months, when the numbers particularly started to change in Manitoba, there started to be more of a demand for that information. And even though it was probably about a 2 to 3 week gap, I understand that's a long time for parents, including myself. We're waiting for information, right, about how our school is going to look for your son or daughter. 3 weeks can be a long time when you're waiting for that information. The information eventually came. Would we have liked it to be 3 weeks sooner? Yeah, but we wanted it to be right. But when you can't plan a year in advance, when you don't have a pandemic every year, and hopefully we won't have one again within our lifetime. Those are challenges. So absolutely, I wish that information could have flowed faster, but that is not in any way should be taken as blaming anybody within the education system. Everybody has been working really hard through the summer, doing their best in the circumstances. We may not always agree on everything, but I would never take away from the effort that anybody put in. Well, look at that. I ran you out of questions. We should have just said we're going to keep going. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the day.